John 3:16. God so loved the world that he gave his only Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish but have everlasting life. Aha. Oh, that was great. Well, it was mostly teenagers who came together around Raymond Wiley, and as you can imagine with teenagers it wasn't easy. I don't think. I wasn't here all the time. Alistair Blythe would be able to tell you more about that, but it was teenagers. And then we met down in where Morrison's is now. There was a house there that started off as a house and had services there, and then when it grew a bit we moved into a building that was owned by the Church of Scotland there. Oh goodness, I think it was quite chaotic really.
Chaotic.
If you knew like you know Alistair Blythe, but there's Ian Campbell who comes up sometimes. Oh my conscience, it really was quite different. It wasn't like church. I mean, what drew me to it was David Black became as our minister to the church in Denniston, which was a lovely church, lovely people. But he started to talk about all these gifts of the Spirit. I thought he was cracked. I really did. I didn't believe him. And he kept encouraging me to go to meetings. And one of the meetings I went to, my opinion of healing was it was all right for people with sore backs and sore heads, you know, a bit of attention. But there was a lady there who had a very bad heart condition, and I really felt they were exploiting vulnerable people like that. And she got carried up onto them, and they prayed for her, and then she got brought back down again, and she looked the same to me. But she came back to tell us that in the last hymn she stood up and to sing, and her relatives looked at her and said, "Are you standing?" And she said, "Ah, I feel so much better." So then I can't remember who it was, but I know he was a very nice man. He wasn't one of these folk that was very blustery and telling everybody things. But they said, "I think you should tell that man." So he said to her, "What could you not do when you came in?" And she said, "Well, I couldn't climb the stairs into the church, and we had internal stairs." And he said, "Right, try walking up these stairs, but if you get breathless or anything, stop immediately." So she walked slowly up the front. This was people telling me later. Or she came and told us also, and she ran up the rest and ran back down again. She'd been healed.
Wow.
That's the first person I ever saw healed. Right, well, my understanding of it was I had read it in the Bible, and I think this is quite difficult because although I would have said, if you'd asked me, do you believe in speaking in tongues, do you believe in all these things that they talk about in the Bible, I would have said, of course I do. But I had no actual experience of it. You know, not really anyway. I suppose sometimes people get healed if you prayed for them, but this was different. And I was very resistant to it. And then one night I decided I was never going to go back to church. And the only thing that had kept me going was I ran a house group in Easter House with women, and I didn't know how I could tell them that, but then I thought the truth's better than a lie. So I decided I was never going back to church. So I was sitting thinking, what do I do now then? And although I was telling myself I didn't really believe in God and all that, I asked God to show me a way forward and what this was about. And suddenly my bedroom lit up. It was a wee 40-watt bulb in my lamp, and suddenly the bedroom lit up, and there was this feeling of power, and it seemed to come from a particular source. So I was just watching all this round me, and suddenly I started to speak in tongues, and that was a life-changing moment for me. I did see at different meetings we went to, and because I then decided that I was wrong, you know, that I was wrong to be sceptical that this was really existed. And then when I saw it in other people, maybe at meetings, things like that, then we did see things like demons being cast out, and people were healed, and well, speaking in tongues definitely was there, and you know, just generally all the gifts of the Spirit. I think the only gifts of the Spirit that I haven't seen and been aware of is someone being raised from the dead. Yet. That was, I would say that was of God. I mean, it couldn't not be of God. I remember David brought me up here to see the old brickworks, and he was talking about how they were going to have a community here, and he said, oh, your house will be over there. And I said, David, I don't come from a background of people who buy houses. I just couldn't do that. That very week the factor sent me a letter asking would I like to buy my flat, and from there on everything just fitted in. I mean, I couldn't say God didn't bring me here. Mm-hmm. And every single person who came here had that story to tell of how God had. There wasn't a person, Brian and Lily, certainly Alistair and Fiona, and everybody else, if you asked them how did they come to be here, they would tell you a story of how God brought them here. One couple, the Barnards, they were just walking past the meeting we had down at the cross and came in to see how it was going, and they ended up buying a house here. So it was all people who were chosen, I would think, to be here, and that was quite exciting. But none of these things were, although I'm saying it like that, there was a lot of opposition, there was opposition from other churches because we seemed to be encouraging their young people, because if something's happening you'll get young people to come. But also in the, within the avenue, I mean, when I came here, most of the time at first I was wishing I was back home in my wee flat because it seemed there was expectations of me and things, that I found difficult. But I stayed, and here I am. And wonderful. At that time, every evening I would say, I like this part of it, every evening either I was out at something, praise group or something like that, or I had people in my house. There was a constant flow through all the houses of people who had needs or wanted to chat. So we really felt we were here for the community. We weren't here to be a wee Christian huddle. Now, I was out working every day, but the thing that was done for the community was mostly childcare. They put on mother and toddlers and a lot of things like that brought, because as you know, Bishop Briggs has a lot of young families, and that was how we were in contact with the young families. So that would still be here, and an idea that we're here for other people and not just to have a wee holy huddle. Yeah. I've got a great awareness of the presence of God, and I think that's what does it really. I couldn't say that things have been easy for me personally, but during all that time I've had a feeling of the presence of God, that sometimes the surface gets ruffled, but underneath that there's a peace. And I know that, there seem to be people all over the world that are, if you're asking me personally, all over the world praying for me. And I think that has a big effect, that I feel that. But as you know, as I said, I haven't always been kind of up, and I think that's quite, not good, but I think it is good in that I've not been kind of somebody who, sometimes my faith has been challenged, but somehow at that point the presence of God has always come in, and that makes a big difference to me. Now, it depends on I think one of the things that I think is good is that despite the fact that we're not able to get together, as far as I can see, the church is going on, and I think that's great, that the church is not what meets on it, well, it is, it meets on a Sunday, but it also has effect during the week. in the things that the people here are involved in. And that's what I would expect to happen, that people would get really involved in it, in the community, and, you know, in a Christian way. You know, social work can put on good community groups or things like that, but I think the church has something else to offer, and I think that we need to keep on offering that. It all depends on whether we can come together again or not, you know, but I think that the people in the church have there's a great potential for the church to be the church outside the building, you know, and I think that, as far as I hear, I'm not so much involved in it now, but as far as I hear, that people are going on, you know, as Christians. And I think that, I mean, in the beginning, the church met for a few hours at 6 o'clock in the morning, and after that they went into Caesar's household and did their work, and they were still Christians. And I think that's very important, that people are able to talk about the faith to other people, because there must be a lot of people now, with all this going on, that are really needing help and support. And the people they'll know are their neighbours and people, you know, from our church. And I think that will be a big thing for them in the future. I think, and all these gifts of the Spirit are still, I mean, you can pray for people to be healed next door to you, speaking in tongues. I think it's not, some people made it the be-all, but it's not, but it is a tool. You've got all the tools, that these gifts of the Spirit were all tools, and I think we've got all of them. And I think that I would hope that everybody in the church, including me, would be aware of that we can use these on a day-to-day basis, even if you're meeting somebody in Asda or whatever. Maybe it brings that more to the front now. It's not just something you do in a building, it's something you do in Asda or wherever you are. You can get out there. I would say to them to keep their relationship with God real and vital in their life. That's what they will bring to the church. Because I think that's so important, that we don't get into a routine of being in the church, but like every Sunday, it's good if we ask God, what do you want me to do today, if anything, so that your connection is to God and not just to the people or whatever. You need to have a strong connection to God, or it becomes just a routine. So, one of the main principles that every one of us here has to take in and realise is that relationships are very, very, very important to God. And there is no leeway here. And when we see Jesus in operation, then we know that he goes to the vulnerable. We know he goes to the people who are outcast. We know that he is not somebody who is exclusive and, but he's someone who brings the love of God, particularly to the people who are struggling, particularly to the people who would feel divided from everyone else and to be outcast. This is Jesus, the Son of God. Jesus healing the sick, raising the dead, controlling nature. All the time he was saying to the people who were watching this, I'm the Creator God. I'm the Creator. I have come, and I am going to show you what life will be like within the new creation when it comes down from heaven. The new creation will be a place where God's intention is carried out, that there will be no sickness, there will be no death. Come on, Lazarus, out of the tomb. Death is going to be, and we were singing about that there. The grave has no claim on us now. So Jesus demonstrated that by bringing Lazarus out of a tomb covered in grave clothes. First thing he says is, get the grave clothes off, you're free now.